And don't be feeling blue, no, no. Shine your light all around, like I know you can do, baby. Yeah, I know you can do. Now some people call me. Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, my guest and friend, Sofia Smallstorm, returns to the show. Sofia will talk to us about her research into cryptocurrencies, the blockchain, and the enlightenment of understanding. And so, without further ado, here's the show with Sofia. Hello, everyone. It's Mike Williams, and we have another show with Sofia Smallstorm. And Sofia, I always get a lot of feedback from folks. They love our shows. And you talk about a lot of very interesting things. You bring a lot of good stuff to the table with your newsletters, and that's usually the basis of our discussions. With this one, you took a run at cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and the such, and I know that I'm not an expert in it, and I know that you don't claim to be an expert in it, so this was really your initial dive into understanding it some more. So even before we get going here, I want the audience to know that we are not specialists in cryptocurrencies and don't lay claim to knowing everything about them. But I found your newsletter very, very informative, and it does raise a lot of questions, especially with regard to what we've been told about cryptocurrencies, about it being anonymous and essentially being a way around the current monetary system, I guess I'll call it the central banking system. And after reading your newsletter, it pretty much confirmed and validated what I was thinking, that it's not those things. So maybe you can just explain a little bit about why you decided to look at cryptocurrencies.
First of all, thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to do shows with you. I really enjoy it, and I think we hash out a lot of stuff that other people enjoy listening to and then chewing over themselves. I mean, this is about sharing perspective, right? So to get people's perspectives going, because every time your perspective gets charged up, you never know what you're going to stumble into. So, Mike, I didn't know much about cryptocurrency. I didn't like the name Bitcoin. Bits, bytes, anything that smacks of computers, I don't like automatically. So this Bitcoin thing, somebody emailed me, it was a few years ago, and he said, oh, you should look into it. You should get some. This is the new revolution. And I said, no, just a flat out no. And then I heard that, recently people are making all kinds of money. I had a couple of friends who quintupled their money, and they were just all ecstatic. And then it fell right after that. I mean, it went from like $18,000 to, I don't know what, 8 or something. And I thought, well, what the hell is all this about? Why are they doing this to people? Why are they putting people on this kind of a seesaw? And I heard the rumors that it has nothing to do with the banks. And I thought, okay, I have a feeling this is about a revolution in the making. But what is it? And I got somehow I stumbled into this word blockchain. Oh, I know what it was. I got some anonymous pitch, a sales pitch email that said, if you think people are making money in cryptocurrency, you should look into blockchains and you should invest in blockchains because blockchains run cryptocurrencies. And it's the blockchain which is the next big investment, explosion. So I looked at blockchains and, oh my God, it's like peering into a serpent pit.
When I started looking into it, the first thing I gleaned from it was that these blockchains are essentially databases. Once information or data is loaded into the blockchain, it's there forever. There's no such thing as deleting it out. And once it's there, it's there.
Right. And that's what makes it so-called transparent and secure.
Right, but it also, in my view, is there are some things you probably don't want to have live forever in a blockchain. Personal information, whatever, medical records or, whatever, So if I understood your newsletter correctly, it was saying that there's going to be many facets of our life that will eventually wind up in these blockchains.
Well, those are not going to be made transparent as you might think based on what you just said. There's a lot of data scrambles that are created for identity protection, but there's always identity verification and the necessity for an identity to operate on the blockchain. So let's just go to the beginning.
Okay.
I found this website, bitconnect.co, and I was pretty surprised by what I read. Okay. Cryptocurrency is a new and revolutionary type of currency. All right, we know that. Like any other currency or unit of account, it only has value because people think it has value. And I said, what? I mean, they could manipulate that any way they want, right?
Right. And that's the problem. That's the same argument they have with fiat money, right? Fiat money is not backed by anything. And so it has value to the degree that people believe it has value. But once that belief, for some reason, it goes away or it wanes, the fiat money system collapses. So that's another thing that set off alarms for me.
So then I looked at the list of, bullet points. What drives cryptocurrency price? And it said limited supply and the supply and demand. So let's talk about that. Bitcoin, it's only one type of cryptocurrency, but people consider it the Zeus. It's the top dog of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin has a maximum of 21 million whole units, divisible 100 million times. So Bitcoin isn't infinite like fiat currency is. It's finite. And I said, okay, well, that's something I'm going to have to crunch on. So that is what creates the limited supply. And with 7 billion plus people on the earth, 21 million units is not going to spread very far. And those 21 million units can only be chopped up 100 million times. So this is what creates a limited supply. So people want Bitcoin because they perceive that it's important for them to have. And they're willing to exchange their existing assets for these new thingamabobs. So now let's look at the blockchain. The blockchain is the ledger of records, which is where block comes from. And these records are where you mine the bitcoins. As the bitcoins get chopped up, they get added to this blockchain. So it's like a ledger.
Right.
And making new bitcoins and uploading transactions to blockchains is called mining. So that's where I think of mining as going to caves and trying to draw materials that have value to them out of rocks, ores and whatnot, gold. But this is how they're redefining mining now. So blockchains are decentralized, and they have this thing called Byzantine fault tolerance. So this term, Byzantine fault tolerance, comes from battle talk. It really comes from this concept of generals who do or do not agree on the method of attack on an enemy. So as it relates to blockchains, this Byzantine fault tolerance is important because a user may transmit or post false transactions on this blockchain. So they have an associated term called POW, proof of work. So proof of work means the energy that is put into securing the blockchains. Now, if you're thinking of this enormous network, I think of like the mycelium in a forest. That's the fungal network that is under the ground in the forest. And I think I read somewhere that just to set your foot on the earth of the forest, there's going to be 300 miles of mycelium under your one footprint. So that's how I see the blockchain. It's like this connection of mechanical neurons that support all the activity that we're seeing. And I was horrified to learn that in the case of Bitcoin, the blockchain that sits on uses as much energy to secure itself as a small country every year.
Yeah, that was interesting to me because, just as a side note, I'm always getting letters like everybody else who lives here in North Carolina from our utility that is always trying to tell us to use less electricity. And they try to compare us to other homes and a house that is very efficient. So I'm reading your newsletter. I'm thinking to myself, do they get the same letters that I get? Because they're just consuming tons and tons of resources, electricity in this instance.
But it's all rationalized because it's going to be secure and it's going to eliminate litigation from our lives. And I'm going to explain. Now, this is another thing that it takes a little bit of work to grasp. So the transactions around Bitcoin sits on the blockchain, but blockchains are also places to do smart contracts. This is all kind of meshed together. And these blockchains have to be secure. And a crypto blockchain has to be exceedingly secure because you don't want people getting in and plundering your wallet and spending your money, right?
Right.
So the concept of wallet is what counters the tradition of the central bank. These are decentralized interactions. You don't go through the bank or the insurance company or the centralized hub to have something or to store something. We have our own wallets, as I understand it. And they do a lot of data scrambling to secure your wallet, to make sure that it's hard for people to connect your real identity with your wallet and get into your wallet. Again, I'm not an expert on this, but what struck me as really weird was they boast about the blockchain as something that is simultaneous and instantaneous. So, normally in the setting of a centralized hub, let's say I'm buying a house or you're buying a house. Well, we sign paperwork and then it has to be sent or faxed to things like title companies and this and that. And it takes a few days for people to send copies to all the other places that need to have copies. And on the blockchain, boom, it's done right away. Everybody sees the last thing that happened. So it's instant in that way. It takes much less time and therefore it's thought to be modern and preferable. It cuts out the middleman.
So it limits the human intervention in a particular process then.
Right. It minimizes the human bumbling because they say that, okay, humans can make mistakes. You could get a document that has a page missing. And that's because of human error. So the blockchain is not going to make that kind of error because the blockchain it's a computer brain, right? It's a computer network.
Yep.
So the fault tolerance has to do with false or deliberate mistakes made. And there are hackers. Nobody's saying that blockchains cannot be hacked. So this guy, this genius, Vitalik Buterin, 22 years old, he programmed the Ethereum network. And he explains on blockgeeks.com what a smart contract is. So here's something we have to get straight. Smart contracts, which is all about what blockchains do, they're not contracts. They're instructions, and they're self-executing. They're called digital contracts, self-executing contracts, or smart contracts. And they operate in many tiny little steps. If, then. If this happens, then that happens. So hundreds of people can witness these mini tiny little steps. And therefore, the blockchain is considered to give you faultless delivery.
Well, when they say that many people can see the steps, that's where I was a little stuck. Like, who are the many people? What do they mean by that?
The users on that blockchain.
Who are involved in that particular transaction?
I would guess.
Okay.
The different entities or parties that have to do with selling real estate.
Okay.
Those would be the users. But let's say the way I understand it is this smart contracting is not contracting. It's a set of simple instructions and it self-executes by the blockchain. So as I get it, you chop up, just like Bitcoin chops itself up, you chop up everything you're going to do in tiny little smart contracts. So he says here, suppose, this is Buterin I'm quoting, suppose you rent an apartment from me. You can do this through the blockchain by paying in cryptocurrency. You get a receipt, which is held in our virtual contract. That's the smart contract. I give you the digital entry key, which comes to you by a specified date. If the key doesn't come on time, the blockchain gives a refund. If I send the key before the rental date, the function holds it, releasing both the fee and key to you and me respectively when the date arrives. The system works on the if-then premise and is witnessed by hundreds of people, so you can expect a faultless delivery. If I give you the key, I'm sure to be paid. If you send a certain amount in Bitcoins to me, you receive the key. The document is automatically canceled after the time, and the code cannot be interfered with by either of us without the other knowing, since all participants are simultaneously alerted. So did that make sense to you? You have to use Bitcoin or crypto to pay for all the little steps.
Right.
And then get all these, it's digitizing our lives.
Exactly.
So smart contracts are awesome. This is what the website, I guess it's blockgeeks.com says in its section about how you can use smart contracts. So why are they awesome, according to BlockGeeks? Because they give you autonomy. There are no brokers or intermediaries. Trust, because everything is encrypted. Backup, nothing can be lost. Safety, more of their encryption. Speed, instant updating. Savings, you don't pay intermediaries. And accuracy, there's no human error-filled manual paperwork. So the quote from this blockgeeks.com is, smart contracts guarantee a very, very specific set of outcomes. There's never any confusion, and there's never any need for litigation.
I just don't, I'm at a loss, and maybe I'm just stupid as to why there's never any need for litigation. I don't get that part. Are we saying, or are they saying that somehow everything and everyone is legitimized before the transaction takes place? I don't, it always seems to me that where there's a will, there's a way. If people are going to corrupt a process or corrupt an outcome, even if it's afterwards, they're going to corrupt it. And if they engage in criminal behavior, then there's going to be litigation. So I don't know. I'm not really sure I agree with that statement, and I'm probably missing something.
Well, Mike, I think it's going to take humanity a while to get in stride with this concept of smart contracts and doing everything by smart contracts. And I think, in human relations, there's a lot of misunderstanding, right?
Yep.
It can happen domestically if people are married to one another and he was supposed to pick up the kid for his dentist appointment at 2:30 and he forgot because he had an appointment or a meeting. There won't be any forgetting if these steps are uploaded to the blockchain, and the families can see that this is what's to be done, and then this gets done, and then, this is just my wild kind of like enlargement of where this is really going. We want all of our human interactions to be on a blockchain, ideally, because then we won't have any mix-ups. And our worst mix-ups, the bad ones, we have to go to court, and we have to have our misunderstanding adjudicated, and we need justice for the mistake that was made through this court system of uniform commercial code, judges and lawyers, right?
Right.
So I am describing the direction we're going in with these smart contracts and cryptocurrency, because the smart contracts use the crypto every step. We're in a world of commerce anyway. Our interactions are largely commercial, whether we want to admit that or not. So I say we are making a new Byzantium. Remember Constantinople? Now you call it Istanbul in Turkey. That used to be the old Byzantium, and it was a very wealthy trading city at the entrance of the Black Sea. So the new Byzantium, the way I see it, is a decentralized trading platform controlled by self-executing technologies, these tiny step-by-step things. And by the way, it is said that blockchain development is the new sort of, remember when we had dot-coms as the new booming business? Now blockchain development is the booming business. And if you invest in it, wow, you could get even richer than if you were investing in a cryptocurrency. So I want to discuss my thought here, which I wrote about a while back, about uniform commercial code and the body of law, L-A-W in quotes, that it claims to create for us. And then the new code body of law that we're going to get in place of that. So one of the things that I thought of as kind of a sinister aspect of cryptocurrency and doing everything on a blockchain is you have to have a legal fiction and you have to have a device to use a blockchain. I mean, you can't make arrangements without a device, right?
Right. For me, and I'm probably sounding not very enlightened in this discussion, but as I read your newsletter and now we're talking about it, what bothers me about it is it seems to me like we're turning our life over to the Borg. It seems like we are taking the humanity, the human element out of the process. Now, some people might say, well, that's good because humans can screw things up. But on the other hand, it looks like we're just turning it over to an artificial intelligence, and then at the end of the day, what's going to happen is this AI in the form of a blockchain and all this stuff, I can see it where it becomes the final arbiter. You're just going to live your life and you're going to be ruled by data and by computer programs and computer logic. Maybe I'm in my own way on this thing. Maybe I'm just not seeing it how others are seeing it. They might just think I'm a dinosaur, but those are my thoughts. And I'm trying to get my head wrapped around, well, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that way. Maybe I should be a little more progressive with this. But I just keep getting stuck with not trusting this type of entity, this type of technology.
Right, Mike. I think, you're really reflecting a generation of human beings that never needed this stuff and doesn't want it and has no use for it. But we've all birthed children.
You're saying I'm old, is what you're saying.
I am saying that. And our children, the next generation, are going to be conditioned to do things, do their lives and enact their lives on the blockchain. So I was surprised that computer code is what they call logic. So on this BitGeeks website, I think that's the website I got this from. The original code is written by a person, somebody that I call a bit geek. I used to call them Google geeks, but now I call them bit geeks. And they're very, very smart. They're usually young men in their 20s, and they went to, math and physics camp when they were 11. They're really smart. So the original code is written by a person, but once the smart contract code is uploaded to the blockchain, only the logic in the account dictates the actions of that account. So to clarify, many people are critical of the name smart contract because it's not smart. It's just a set of instructions anyone can write. Here's the other problem with the word contract applied to these instructions. It's not a contract. You don't have to comply with it or uphold it. If you don't, the next step just isn't going to happen. So a normal contract has legal consequences in the real world. When you've signed your name to a contract, an arrangement that's considered binding between two people, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, it's going to in some way harm or affect the other party to the contract. And the legal system can be used to sort this out. They say here a smart contract does not have much precedence in the real world. It is only able to send transactions to other accounts on the blockchain. That's all it does. So again, I fail to understand why they ever call this a contract. And I think this languaging is very, very deliberately misleading.
Well, just the word smart. Anytime they use the word smart, I equate that to surveillance, smart TVs, smart this, smart that, so I'm very leery of the use of the word smart whenever we talk about the technologies that they're trying to roll out these days.
Well, the other thing, Mike, is they keep referring to the immutability of the blockchain. And immutability, if you look it up, means reliability. So when you put your transaction on the blockchain, if you give me the Bitcoin money for the apartment, I'll give you the electronic key. You are trusting in the blockchain. And that's all you need to go on for smart contracting, because everything is minced into these tiny steps and they're uploaded to the blockchain. So what's amazing to me is that you have to keep adding new smart contracts to do anything because they're all so small. So it says here, the quote that I got, I keep wondering where I got all these quotes, but I think if you go back in the newsletter, you'll see they come from like mostly some bit geek website. If you have two smart contracts, one for the ownership of dollars and one for the ownership of real estate, you can use a third smart contract as an escrow, allowing a purchase of real estate without an intermediary third party. There are many use cases being built on blockchains, and building them as smart contracts on the same platform creates an ecosystem of applications that complement each other. Now, that's what baffles me, because what's happening is each damn thing we do is reduced to this bit. And that bit is an if-then deal that goes up on the blockchain. And every time you put something on the blockchain, it's called mining. And because it's replicated and mirrored all over the place, it uses all this energy. So, Mike, every little thing that you and I decide to transact on a blockchain takes energy, electrical energy. So as Sylvie of megalith.org in a recent video commented, this isn't sustainable. Why are they shoveling sustainability at us if all this is not?
Well, that was my point before when I was saying I keep getting these memos from Duke Energy here saying where I stand energy use-wise in my home versus my neighbor versus an energy-efficient home. They seem very, very concerned about my energy use at my home, but they don't seem to be very concerned about the amount of energy that this blockchain is chewing up on any given day. That they just don't seem to care about.
Because there's an answer. There's another plan coming for that. And let me tell you what I think it is. A while back, I was talking about human energy harvesting. Do you remember any of that?
Yep.
So we waste energy all day long. We do a lot of biological activities that generate energy that nothing's being done with it, like blinking, breathing, the blood flowing through our body, through arteries and veins, even the flapping of your pants leg while you walk. Where is that going? Nowhere. It's ruffling air, but it's not doing anything. So modern technology has determined that by attaching piezo nano wires to these rhythms, these motions, like to your pants leg, to your invasively into your skin, to hook into your tissues, they can draw or harvest the energy which is felt by rhythm, felt as rhythm, mechanical force, which also translates in physics to frequency, and they can convert that into millivolts, electricity. So each of us potentially, in my crazy imagination, could be wearing a little device that has electrodes and hooks going to various parts of our body and clothing. And every day we produce, that device gathers a certain number of millivolts, AC, out of us. And then we put that into our computer and it uploads this to the blockchain, this energy, or it contributes this to the blockchain to run our little interaction. So each of us is actually supplying our own human energy to the blockchain for our own stuff that we transact on it.
So we generate energy credits, and it sounds like, well, and if you don't generate enough energy credits, well, then you're not going to be able to do certain things until you get the amount of credits you need in order to transact or to do something. It's kind of like sci-fi at this point, but 10 years ago, if we talked about this, people would have thought that it was science fiction. They would have thought we were absolutely out of our minds.
Well, it's going to be necessary because the way they'll frame it is this. If you don't want to harvest your own energy to support your own stuff on the blockchain, then you use the regular energy, electricity, and that's going to be incredibly expensive. You will be charged hellish fees for using the grid. You have to contribute your own watts or whatever, volts rather, to the grid.
To me, it's very disturbing. It really is, because I look at this whole thing, as much as they're trying to sell it as some kind of panacea, as another control mechanism. I'm sorry for those that are out there that eat, breathe, and crap this stuff, and they love it. They love blockchains and cryptos and all that stuff. I just don't see it that way. I look at this and I see this as more perfume on a pig and trying to convince people that more control over your life is good for you. You're going to benefit from it like you wouldn't believe. And I just, Sophia, I don't believe it. And I also don't believe that it's anonymous. I don't believe that it all doesn't roll up someplace. I don't believe that there isn't a data gathering and data assessment. I don't believe there's no vetting being done. To me, this is no different than any kind of other type of database where people are putting information in, like Facebook as an example, where what you feed into Facebook could be sliced and diced every which way from Sunday. And I'm looking at this the same way. And I'm sure I'm going to get emails of people going to say, you're just stupid, Mike. You just don't understand it and everything else. But I am not getting a good feeling about this. I don't know where you're at with it.
Well, again, I'm not a very high-tech person. I'm very slow to catch on to things like I was very slow to begin using email and the internet. So I can't see doing stuff on a blockchain for the sake of safety. And what's happening, Mike, is that people are not looking at each other in the eye any longer. I mean, this whole Airbnb thing and Uber and these are all decentralized interactions between people.
Yeah.
Although it's true that the website Airbnb, that's the central hub there, because Airbnb gets a cut of every arrangement made, right?
Right.
So there's a central something going on. But I think what's scary about this is that they really want you to make a presence, make an account. Every account has to have an origination with a person, right? With some identity. So that, I call it the big monster that crunches algorithms. That can always find you. Somebody can always see where your account originates and all the things you've done. So this issue of, well, it'll be so transparent and safe and clear, and every step will be laid out as this tiny little bit. And the next step can't take place in smart contracting unless the first step, it takes place and is done right. So what really got me thinking was this Luna coin. When I read about Luna coin, I really had a dark feeling about where this was all going. So just to give you a little background, I see all the time, and I've even met people, unfortunately, who now regret that they sent some of their saliva to Ancestry.com or 23andMe. You've heard of those websites, right?
Yep, I did it.
Oh.
It was years ago. I didn't know. And my daughter got it for me as a birthday gift, and she did it also. We want to take a look at our lineage and stuff like that, and but yeah, now I regret doing it.
Well, not only do they give you some false information, they want everyone to be all multicultural. So I've heard that a lot of the times that you're told, the instances people being told that they're part black or
Right.
Something is not even true. But anyway, so the heritage data they're giving you is not necessarily reliable. But the reality of those two sites is that they're funded by pharmaceutical companies. And when you turn in your genetic material, it goes right to Big Pharma. And it's analyzed and God knows what they do with it. So this new thing, I'm just going to read it to you. Luna Coin is an opportunity to trade a cryptocurrency for DNA samples. The company that creates Luna Coins is Luna DNA, and it traces back to the genetic research firm Illumina. Luna Coins will launch in 2018. They plan to earn $40 to $50 million by first selling the coins on the open crypto market prior to turning them into DNA chum for a herd that's desperate to gain a position in cryptocurrency, a market that's incredibly inflated. So what makes me shudder here is that there is a sector of the population that is referred to as the absolute poor. And the absolute poor, they don't have much. A while back, a couple of 100 years ago, absolute poor were people who had possessions made only of wood and earth materials like stone. Today, the term has been redefined in social science. It means a lack of hygiene and sanitation. It means you drink the earth's surface water, which is often very polluted. You live many to a room or a very simple dwelling, and you have a body mass that is several deviations below what it is in the normal Western or more wealthy world. So, as for money, the absolute poor, they don't have any to speak of. So what's being offered here? Give us your DNA, everybody's got that, and we'll give you a share in the crypto market. You too could become enormously wealthy.
So this goes back to what I was saying. There is an agenda behind this, and it's being presented as some kind of way around the establishment, a way around the controlling apparatus. And I've actually heard folks, Sophia, I know you have too, that are in the alternative research and truth communities that espouse this. They talk about this, how this is wonderful, how this is going to break the backs of the banking cartel and all that stuff. And in conversations that I've had with folks who've brought this up with me, I said, look, money is the controlling mechanism. It is the ace up the sleeve of the controllers, right? It's Rothschild that said he doesn't care who's the president and who runs a country. It only matters who controls the money. So that's where I get kind of stuck on this thing, is that a lot of people in the truth community, they were wringing their hands over the fact that we went from a society with actual tangible cash, and we know it's fiat, but let's just for a moment set that aside. You had actual dollars, and fives and tens and 20s in your hands, and then people started using ATMs. And then they were saying, we keep using ATMs, we're going to a cashless society. And then we moved to where we're today with online banking and PayPal and paying your bills all digitally. Nobody's exchanging cash. So that's more cashless society stuff. And to me, this is really the end game. This is where there won't be any more cash. Everything's got to go through this blockchain. Everything's got to be in cryptocurrency. And the downside to that is that if you are a dissident or you're not playing ball or, you're engaged in something that they don't want you to be engaged in, saying things or promoting things or whatever that are anti-establishment, anti the agenda, then, like that, they'll turn you off. And this is what a lot of people in the truth community and the alternative research community have been warning about for like a decade. And to me, here we are. We're on the precipice of this actually being implemented. And there are people in the community who are saying this is wonderful. This is going to circumvent and do an end run around the central banking system. And I just do not buy it.
Well, Mike, they've rewarded the initial investors in Bitcoin with
They did.
Escalating wealth or a seesaw. They're on a seesaw. It can escalate, it can go down. But that's how they brought a bunch of otherwise naysayers into their field. And in order to use cryptocurrency, you have to have a recorded identity. And what they're doing with this Luna coin is they are pulling in, luring, roping in the undocumented people of the world. They're all going to have to be documented if they want to have a share in the crypto market. And that documentation creates a spot for every human being on the world's ever-expanding AI blockchain grid. This is the trap, right?
Yep, you're exactly right.
So crypto for everyone, no human left behind. Use your spit, use your DNA, we'll take that. And never mind what we do with that. Everybody's got DNA to give. Everybody. And with that, they pull you into documentation, into the legal fiction. Now they've created a legal fiction for every single person, which fits into, it'll plug into the new code. And the new code is this machine logic. That's going to take the place of uniform commercial code. They say themselves, there's not going to be no need for litigation. Just use our code.
And the thing is, there's no value. I mean, there's no value. The value is all perceived. That's the thing that gets me is it's not backed by anything. Again, to a lot of people, I might be sounding like I'm a dinosaur, right? But it's not backed by gold. It's not backed by silver. It's not backed by anything that's tangible. It's just like the fiat currency. You just have to believe it has value. And as long as you believe it has value, then it's going to have value. Now, you had something in your newsletter, Sophia. Let me read this from page 6. This was an eye-opener, right? This kind of just sums it up. And this was a quote, and I'm not really sure where it was a quote from. Maybe it was a website or another source that you pulled this from. But it said that from the cradle of civilization, when money was first invented, people could own money. Eventually, entities that people imagined, such as states and companies, were able to own money. Now, for the first time in history, a machine, in quotes, logic, can independently own money. It so happened that soon after corporations could own money, they were awarded more rights than people themselves. Look up corporate personhood. So now what? That was perfect. When I read that, I thought to myself, you hit the nail right on the head. So now machines, code, computer programs are going to own the wealth? I don't know.
Right. Well, that's the answer. Everybody complained about banks owning the wealth and creating the wealth. Well, okay, you didn't like that? Try to like this.
Yeah. So it just, to me, just reeks of, it's another scheme. It's another step toward the centralizing of the world. What I see them doing now is basically tidying up and really ratcheting down where they need to sew certain things up. And I see stuff like this, and it amazes me, the controllers and their apparatus, they're very slick. It's brilliant in a very evil way, because everybody is thinking that they're going to go knock down your door and they're going to run into your house and take your money, hold you by your ankle, shake you upside down and get every coin out of you. And everybody's looking for some kind of physical interaction, some kind of physical confrontation that's going to take place where they're going to have to take something from you. You're not going to get it from me. I'm not going to give it up. You're going to have to come and take it. But the thing is, they don't have to take anything. All they do is they roll stuff out like this and people give it up. So there is no physical confrontation. The people that control, they're very patient. They're very, very patient. And they will just keep plodding along incrementally, methodically, rolling things like this out until they get exactly what they want and they reach their end state. I know it sounds like doom and gloom, but this is what I see. It's like people saying, oh, they're going to chip us all. I'm like, we don't have to chip you. Everybody's walking around with a phone, or some kind of other technology that will do the same thing as an RFID chip. So did they have to bring you in and actually force an RFID chip into you? No. What did you do instead? You allowed them to track you by, using the technology and using phones. And it's the same thing with this. I know I'm probably rambling on a little bit here, but do you have any thoughts?
You're right. The way that they've done a Hegelian trick on us, because everybody complained about paper money and the banks ad nauseum, complaining for decades. And so they said, all right, here, you don't like the banks? Here, this doesn't have any bank. And the same people who were grousing about the banks just leapt at this stuff. And, people write to me and they want to know if I will take Bitcoin on Avatar products, my store, to buy whatever, iodine or magnesium. No, I don't want to take Bitcoin. That's the last thing I want to take.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen is, and you mentioned it earlier in the show, in our discussion, that they're going to level the playing field at some point. So the people that got into it early, and I'm not talking about the little guy that got into it and made some money. I'm talking about there were major investors in Bitcoin, many of them coming out of China. They were rewarded for getting in early in the game. And I equate it to the same thing as insider trading. They have inside knowledge of where it's going. And so they're able to capitalize and leverage and taking advantage of an opportunity. They're opportunists. But what's going to happen at some point is it's just going to settle out. And nobody's going to be better off for it. It's just going to be a much better system to track and surveil. That's my view. So the people who are going to make a lot of money at this are going to be the people on the front end. And then at some point, there's going to be a line drawn in the sand that's going to say, okay, you guys got your money. Thank you very much for helping us advertise, market this, and pump it up. God bless you. Everybody else, they're going to flatten it. I'm not going to say they're going to cave the economy. What I'm saying is they're going to make it no better than it is today with fiat currency. Because they don't want people being wealthy. They don't want people walking around with money in their pockets. They want to control you. That's what it is at the end of the day. And you can't control people who have a lot of money sticking out of their pockets because these people can go off and go do things. They can be entrepreneurs or whatever. So I don't know. Again, this is what I see coming down the pike, and I'll say it again. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but whatever, guys. I mean, email me, and if I'm being a dumbbell and I'm not getting this, then send me your logic and your rationale and explain to me why it is I'm wrong.
Well, Mike, there's the issue of utility. So you keep saying people with a lot of money in their pockets. Well, I don't know if we'll use the word money for much longer. It might be people with a lot of Bitcoin.
Right.
Or people with a lot of some other kind of cryptocurrency. So if you can't use this thing called Bitcoin or some of the other ones, Luna or whatever, Ether, it doesn't have utility. So apparently what gives these cryptos their utility, their price, their value is that they have utility, meaning people will accept them, and they have the higher the mining difficulty and the energy usage, that gives it a higher price and it can be used for an investment. So this part I don't understand very well. I guess if you don't have that much of it to be divided up, then it's more difficult to mine, to obtain it. I don't know. I don't really understand this mining thing myself, but the limited supply. But what strikes me as kind of not fair is that anybody can make a cryptocurrency and put it out there that somehow that cryptocurrency is endowed with more importance because of the manipulation of public perception. So I don't know who originates cryptocurrencies, but I assume it's the powers that be, various members. And you have to have a lot of sway to sway public opinion such that your new crypto becomes the sought after crypto. So it could be that Bitcoin, which was used just to create awareness and herd a lot of people into this, will lose its value, and some other very esoteric, very difficult to obtain crypto will have the highest value down the road. And how is anyone going to know which one goes up and which one goes down? Because I don't see how, even though it's supposed to be transparent, I don't see how we really can, if it's all fair and square, which we know it isn't, so we're not going to be permitted to see which one we should invest in. It's going to be part of a manipulation scheme, don't you think?
No, I do think that. In fact, I watched a video, Sophia, maybe about a week ago or so, and in that video, I guess there were some new cryptocurrency offerings by various companies, and people, in the hopes that this was going to take off, invested. Some people invested tons of money into it. I mean, I'm talking about average everyday people who put $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 into this. And, then they got their wallet, which basically is the GUI. It's the user interface, right? Where you can see what's going on with your cryptocurrencies. And within a short period of time, the whole thing tanked and they lost their 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000. My point being is you don't know. It's on your point. Something new could come along and then you have all this investment in Bitcoin and something else they decide. And we say they, it's the people behind the curtain. They decide that this is going to be the new route that we're going to go. And if you're over here, so sorry, so sad, too bad for you. I don't know. It seems to me like it could be very elusive. We'll have to see because there's no doubt in my mind that at some point, I don't think this is going to be optional. At some point, they're not going to be trying to sell it anymore. They're going to get to the point where they're going to say, well, this is how we do things. So like you said, right, so if you don't want to do it this way, then we're going to make it very difficult for you or very expensive for you to do it any other way. So if you do it this way, it's going to be a lot easier on you. So you probably should think about that a little bit before you decide that you don't want to participate in our process.
Right, and they'll make you harvest your own energy to support your transactions on the blockchain because it'll be too expensive to use the grid for that. This is what I used to say in earlier days when I said, right now technology enhances biological life to some degree, but it's going to flip and biology is going to support technological activity. And that's the human energy harvesting. And I think the most sensible use of it, I put that word sensible in quotes, is, if these blockchains take so much energy, the energy of a small country just to run Bitcoin, then it's not energy friendly technology. And they're going to ask us, they're going to say, well, you're doing this for yourself. You're using the blockchain to, purchase or whatever, make agreements. And every time the blockchain releases something to you and you put an agreement onto it, one of these tiny steps, you have to pay and pay with your own, biology.
Yeah.
So we have that. Just like the DNA. You have DNA, so why don't you submit your DNA and we'll give you a Luna coin for that. And give us more and we'll give you another Luna coin or 2 or 3. I mean, they might start with organ donation. I'm just thinking out loud. But they might say, look, everybody's got 2 kidneys. Give us a kidney and we'll give you a nice chunk of Luna coin.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched. It's like I said, Sophia, there are things that if we had brought up 5 or 10 years ago that are happening today, people would have laughed hysterically. They would have said, oh, you guys are absolutely out of your minds, Then fast forward 5 or 10 years later, and these things have come to be. They've manifested. So what's really disconcerting about all of this, and it's not just, the blockchain and the cryptos, what's really disconcerting is that everything is about harvesting humans. I mean, harvesting your DNA, it's harvesting your wealth, it's taking your rights. I don't know. I mean, it's every day I wake up and I think to myself, can it possibly get any more wicked? And every day, just about, it does. Something else comes rolling along. And maybe it's because, we are looking into this stuff, so we're maybe more aware of the initial signs that they're going someplace or, they're going to try to implement something. So we become aware of it in the early part of the process, whereas most people don't pay attention to it. So, they don't really maybe see the level of wickedness that is being cranked up or that is eventually going to come our way in a different shape and a different form. But I'll tell you what, I mean, there is goodness to being awake, and then there is a downside. The good part is that, as I've mentioned to a lot of people when I speak to them, is when you are awake, then you are more aware of their pitfalls and the bear traps they put out there where they try to catch you. So you can spend your time a good portion of your time trying to navigate your way around those traps. The downside is that it doesn't always lead to happy thoughts every day. And there are some people who walk around life and, they don't give any thought to any of this stuff and they think everything's just great. How's things great? And you're thinking, well, things really aren't great, but wow. So I don't know if I'm making sense here, but that's like two ends of the spectrum, I guess is what I'm saying.
I mean, it's all about how you define what keeps you going. And I think that's what it boils down to. And if this kind of stuff excites you and you want to be in the seesaw where you could make money on a cryptocurrency, it's no different from the stock market. I'm imagining that a lot of people who were sitting on silver, which became quote unquote worthless, right, after that was manipulated, have traded in their silver to try to make it up through Bitcoin. And maybe they did. And what will happen if they plummet Bitcoin and raise silver, right? They can play those two against one another.
Look, I know people that lost an enormous amount of money in 401ks when the stock market tanked. I know one person in particular had a ton of stock in Lucent Technologies. Remember Lucent Technologies? Lucent went belly up and the stock crashed. And that person had invested essentially their retirement into Lucent Technology. And at one point they were sitting high and mighty. Lucent stocks were doing very well and they were sitting pretty. And then just like that, the whole thing disappeared. And that happened with a lot of people, not just with Lucent, who were investing in stock portfolios. And here's the thing. Most people who are investing, like the average person investing in their 401ks at work, they don't know anything about investments. They don't know anything. And they leave it to the company investment vehicles where they have a prospectus and they say, well, this is what it's about and this is what you could expect. There's no guarantees over the long run, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. History has shown this type of stock and this type of industry grows at this rate and pace and so on. But the thing is, most people haven't a clue and they invest blindly into things and they can have a good ride for a period of time. But then typically there comes a point where the ride is over and it stops and then there's a lot of loss. I've seen this with a lot of folks that I know, because I used to work in the corporate world, where they try to make a big bang in the stock market for their 401ks. And then when the stock market tanked, going back, was it 08, 09? Then what they did is they then were hustling to find the next biggest thing that they can invest in order to make up the losses. And usually when you're seeing like big returns on something, especially initially, it's high risk. They are high risk investments. And people ignore that. That it's almost like Sophia, like they go to Vegas and they're gambling. And maybe I should take the word almost out. They're gambling. They're gambling, And I see this whole thing with the cryptos as kind of in that realm. Because people are jumping in, and a lot of people don't understand it. They're just like, oh, I'm going to do it because some pundit or talking head on CNBC said, this is something I should be in, and he wears a nice suit and tie. I'm going to listen to him, and they go and do it. And I'm telling you, I think that at some point this whole thing is going to come crashing down.
Well, Mike, again, what motivates us is different for each person, and I really am taken with the interview that I did with Martin Kenny. In that interview, he used a word that I hadn't really heard before, and I wasn't conscious of it. And it was the word inner standing as opposed to understanding.
Yep.
And he said that his life changed when he began to go in the direction of inner standing, which in his case was to go within, was to quit his job and come to a grinding halt and re-explain everything to himself. The whole universe he had to explain all over again. And I phrased it this way when I was listening to him. I said, when you leave the world of understanding, the realm of understanding, where you're actually submitting. You're standing under authority. You go to school to understand what the teachers are teaching you, which is in the textbooks, which has been established as the bona fide education. This is what you have to know. This is what the state wants you to know. So it's all about submission, agreement, and a yielding, and nothing that comes from yourself. They tell children to sit still, don't look out the window, don't do this, don't do that, don't ask questions. We're going by, the curriculum, what's in the textbook. And then you get to be an adult and you have to submit to all kinds of regulations and rules and contracts and authorities and agencies. And this world of understanding is a soul-killing realm. So once you leave that declaratively and you go to inner standing, the whole rhythm of your life changes. You're now on a different metronome. The beat has been replaced by something very new, very fresh, very uncharted, and very unexplored, and it all pertains to you. And that's where I think everyone needs to be. I think people are investing in Bitcoin because other people are. There's a lot of copycat, frantic, anxiety. Oh my God, I lost money in this. Maybe I can make it up here, or maybe I can make a few $1,000s and put an addition on my house or whatever. But inner standing is going to take you to all the right places. That's what I have come to believe. And in order to do the inner standing thing, you have to work up your independence, your courage, your patience. Maybe you wake up every day and you say, inner standing, what are you going to show me today? And wondrous things can happen, including making money. Opportunities come from inner standing, not from understanding. Slavery comes from understanding.
That's exactly right, Sophia. And our lives, the whole thing is built around submission. And I also want to recommend to the audience that the show that you did with Martin Kenny, that they watched that. And I will put that in the description box below. I'll also put the show that I did with Martin in the description box also. I want to say that when I first got introduced to Martin or Martin's work, he was still is a breath of fresh air. I mean, he's a young guy. I would say, I don't know how old he is. I would say maybe he's in his 30s. Where he was and where he is today really is an inspiration, should be an inspiration for a lot of people. So the whole concept of understanding versus understanding is very, very important. It's a very, very important concept to grasp.
Yeah, and to live by. Everybody has to make that choice. But the thing is, with understanding, you're going to be constantly stressed out. That's how I see it. You're going to be comparing yourself to everybody else. Well, why don't I have this or that? Or look, they did this. Maybe I should do that too. It's very competitive, and the comparison that it requires is not, I don't think it's healthy. Whereas inner standing, you're on your own. You're on your own. The playing field is absolutely stripped of anything that is going to make you anxious. And you have to learn to live with the unknown. And the inner standing adventure will recreate your life. It will make it all new again, and it will be beneficial, is my bet.
No, I agree. And the transition going from the old understanding ways to the inner standing, that could be could make people a little nervous, because you are making a very significant change in how you go about your life and how you think about things and how you do things. So it could get maybe a little scary, for a period of time. But once you kind of break through and force your way through that fear component of it, if you do experience it, then everything's wide open. It's wide open. You can discover, you can explore, use your creativity and your imagination, which is what we're really here to do. We didn't come here so that we can be enslaved to this system. Every day, Sophia, when I wake up, and I think more and more about this system, and it is a system of enslavement. And you and I talked before the show, right, where we said that it's very difficult to get people to understand that because they were born and bred into this system and they don't know anything different. So to them, this is just the way it is. And when you try to introduce new ideas and new concepts about how it could be, many people, they don't see it, they don't understand it, and they just kind of set it aside, like, that's crazy talk,
I'd like to do a show about the universe, cosmic law, some of the things I got from Martin Kenny's cosmic egg thing, cosmic egg model of the universe, into which I inserted in a diagram form the corporate and commerce fiction layers. And then the bottom of my diagram is where you come in as a legal fiction and where you come in as a free human being. I think that this concept of watersheds that I started talking to you about at the beginning of our connection today, which I've written another newsletter about, this is my new newsletter, it relates so much to what is natural law and what is commerce and legal and invented in terms of regulation. So I want to beg you, please, 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 for a show on that as soon as we can.
She doesn't have to beg, folks. She knows she can come on anytime. We're going to do a show on that because I do think it's very, very important. It's very important. I would love to do a show on that.
Yes, and wait till you read the newsletter. I said to Mike he was going to jump up and down with elation once he read this. So I'm very excited about it. This is what Understanding brought to me. Understanding brought to me this whole new way of looking at my surroundings. And that is powerful because once your perspective changes, you are empowered. You are you.
That's right. That's right. You are you, and you're doing and thinking and acting the way you're supposed to be as a free sovereign soul that came into, experience this physical realm that we incarnated into, and, but we've been stifled. But it's still time to break out, Sophia, right? There's still time to be able to break out and to fulfill your, your ultimate goals and objectives as a spiritual being.
Well, I would rephrase that, not to be critical, but I would say to realize your ultimate goals and objectives, because realization has two meanings. One is I now know, I realize what I have to do. And two is that it's being done. You're attaining them. When you realize that understanding is what you're here to do, not understanding, then you are putting your first step forward, your first foot forward into realizing, obtaining, and being and moving into that terrain. And it's your terrain. It's for you and it's created by you. But anyway, I'm very excited about my new newsletter, and I am going to make a pitch for my newsletters here. If people like listening to these shows, you will like reading the newsletters, I believe. And that's what I'm being told. And the newsletters are my effort on a monthly basis to think about what have I learned this month or lately, and how can I write this up in an entertaining way, pulling 2 or 3 strands together so that people see things completely differently. They see something they might not have known before. And I, too, didn't know such a thing before. I managed to stumble into some things and put something together. I know I'm using the word thing a lot, but I don't have words for what goes on in this newsletter. And it's a little bit of a freaky experience because I start and I'll go, what should I write about this month? And I have no idea. And so then I say to myself, well, you know what? I'm interested in this. I'm interested in that. I saw such and such a thing. How about if I try to put those together? And then I come up with the first line of my newsletter in my head, usually when I'm lying in bed at night about to fall asleep. And then the next day, I turn on my computer. I have a special computer that I just write newsletters on, and I start typing, and the whole thing starts tumbling together. And I get very, very excited. And then I send it out, and sometimes I get a little feedback. which is nice.
Also known as a boing moment.
People like the newsletter. They keep my newsletters in a binder, which is growing thicker and thicker because I've been at this now for about 7 years.
No, it's great. Look, your newsletters are great, and they are the foundation of many, many of our shows. And maybe in the very beginning, Sophia, when we first did the shows going back about 4 years ago, maybe they weren't, but soon afterwards, they became, like I said, the foundation. So I love the newsletters, and they're very informative. You know, you're really good at digging into topics, and many times they're complex topics, and explaining them in ways that, you know, the average person can really grasp what it is that you're trying to get across, the point you're trying to get across. So, no, so I highly recommend that it's a subscription. So I know you have some free ones on the website, but it's well worth the price of the subscription. It's, you know, spend some time reading some stuff that is that's interesting.
Well, what I like about what I hear from people is they enjoy reading it. They usually read it in bed. Catherine Fitz reads it in the jacuzzi. And then I have a friend who takes himself out to dinner just to be with my newsletter as his companion and read it. So you can imagine, I think this is kind of interesting. The way I describe it is like this. If you have a dog and you throw him a special treat, he will snag it in the air and then he'll rush over to the very comfy rug by the fireplace where he'll eat it. And that's how people read the newsletter. They take it over to the rug by the fireplace.
So your newsletter is the treat.
I mean, I've just been told this by people. And then people go frantic because they lost an issue or they misplaced it or it came in the mail, but they don't know where they have it. And could I please send another one because they don't want to have a hole in their binder for that one. So I really like it, but here's the small tragedy. I know this morning I woke up with the exact beginning and theme of my next newsletter, but now I can't remember it at all.
You will. It'll come back to you.
Well, anyway, I'll figure it out, but I invite people to read some samples. Usually every year I put up 2 or 3 of the good ones, the really good ones. You can subscribe, you can donate. I usually ask for a minimum of $50 a year. And I know it sounds like a lot, but seriously, this is a different path, my little newsletter adventure every month. And I know people like it because they tell me that. And I love writing it for all of you. So consider and do so if you want. Try it out for a year. And thank you, Mike, for the opportunity to discuss what's in them.
Oh, you're very welcome, Sophia. You're very welcome. I mean, for $4 a month, seriously, it's more than worth it. Now, I did want to ask you before we head out here, anything that you want to talk about that's new in your store?
I started reading The Iodine Crisis by Lynn Farrow, the book, and now I'm raising my own iodine dose because I have to say I realize that iodine is extremely important. So before you get the book, which I'm hoping to carry, I'd really like to sell this book. It's very, very informative. It's written by a journalist who had breast cancer and went out to find out everything she could about breast cancer and bumped into Dr. Sherry Tenpenny at a conference who told her, well, you should look into iodine. And that created, that was inner standing, leading her onto an adventure, into an adventure. And I thought I knew a lot about iodine, but there are things I'm learning from this book, and I really want to get that boing that you get when you take some more iodine, right? So
right.
That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to finish the book, and I might write a newsletter on iodine soon, an update. I have 3 kinds of iodine in my store. One is extremely inexpensive. It's made by a chemist for me at a very reasonable price. It's $20 for a full ounce. You don't even need water to take it. It doesn't have alcohol. It's the nascent iodine that's on my health page in avatarproducts.com. $20. So just scroll down till you find it. Definitely try it out. I send a little flyer with all kinds of very cool iodine information that I created myself, the flyer. I would say to everybody, a drop of iodine might take you on an understanding adventure.
It probably will. I take iodine every day, not as much as what you were telling me that the book says. But what I'll do, Sophia, is we did the iodine show, I guess, about 2 years ago. That show was very, very well received. So I'll put that link in the description box as well, in case people want to get maybe they hadn't watched it before, don't know anything about the benefits of iodine, or if you did watch the show, you can get a refresher. So, all right. Well, is there anything else, or should we wrap up?
No, just avatarproducts.com is my store. You can look at a new store that I put together, which is sort of got the best-selling products from Avatar Products. It's called survivalmodestore.com. You can get iodine there as well. But my store is Avatar Products, and the literature and so forth on the products comes from that store primarily and not the other one. I just haven't figured how to integrate my system into the other system yet. So yeah, I appreciate and enjoy everybody's support. The store is the only way I pay my bills. So I'm very happy to receive customers, new customers, repeat customers. I have a ton of repeat customers who surprise me all the time. And that's a joy to have that kind of surprise. So, okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mike. And we can finish up.
You're welcome, Sophia. And the next show, we'll catch up with your next newsletter.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye now. And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview. And I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
Hey there, brother, take a look around. Does it bother you that the world is upside down? Can't you see? You're not free. Hey there, sister, look out your door. Does it bother you when your child goes to war? Can't you see? You're not free. Hey there, neighbor, look to the sky. Does it bother you that your life is a lie? Can't you see? You're not free. I know you can be if you try. I know you can be if you try. Hey there, Father, standing in the rain. Does it bother you that you never took the blame? Can't you see? You're not free. Hey there, mother, time is passing by. Does it bother you if a child doesn't fly? Can't you see? You're not free. Hey there, stranger, have you lost your soul? Does it bother you when you don't even know? Can't you see?